Hello everyone, welcome to Text Valley. In our last lecture, we discussed microservice architecture. In this lecture, we will discuss about the Spring Boot. So as part of this lecture, we will cover introduction of Spring Boot. Then we will have a look of legacy Spring application. Then we will have a look of Spring Boot based application. Then we will compare both Spring Boot and Spring Legacy applications and the basic feature of Spring Boot. So what is a Spring Boot? Spring Boot is a brand new framework from the team of Pivotal. It is designed to simplify the bootstrapping and development of new Spring applications. What it means, Spring Boot makes developers' life easy. This framework have assertive approach for configuration and reduce the developer's pain towards the Spring configurations and free a developer from the need of understanding the Spring framework and the Spring configurations, and also provide the internal container to run the applications. It means it make application independence from any another or outer requirement to run the application. What you understand in the Spring Boot introduction, uh, Spring Boot is a framework which makes life easy of developers, and developer did not need to understand and did not have to write any kind of codes toward the Spring configurations, and provides internal servers to run the application. Okay, so now let's have a look of legacy Spring based applications. In legacy Spring based applications, that application have lots of configuration. We need to configure component scan, dispatch servlet, view resolver, and lot of configurations we have to be taken care. So in Spring legacy applications, we have to configures, we have to take care configurations in these three files: servlet context.xml, root context.xml, and web.xml, web.xml. So in root.context.xml, whichever beans we defines, it is these are the shared resources and visible all over the web components. What it means, whatever beans we defined as a part of root context XML, these all beans are shared by all the servlet and all the controllers. Okay, so the second file is servlet context.xml. So as part of this XML, whatever configuration we do, these configurations are unable for the servlet context. Let me show you. So this root.context.xml configuration is the container level context loading configuration, and this servlet context.xml is servlet level configuration. So we can have multiple dispatch servlet in single application, and we can define different servlet context for the different servlets in the applications. So all these configurations we have to be take care in the legacy application. Now let's back to the next topic. Now let's have a look of Spring Boot based application. In Spring Boot based applications, the configurations are very low and we don't need to be take care anything. When we are creating a application as a Spring Boot, all the configuration done automatically. So this is the application we create as a Spring Boot applications, and automatically this application.java file has been created. So in this application.java file, this annotation take care all the configurations. If you see this annotation definition, so this annotation is a parent of all type of configuration which is required for Spring application, and it is taken care by the Spring Boot only. If explicitly we want to define the component scan in our application, we can also define here component scan, and we can define the package here. So we can overwrite our configuration as well. If we don't want to overwrite, we can use the default configuration taken care by the framework. And apart to this application.java file which is created automatically, we don't have any other XML configuration file, and even we don't need to be take care of any kind of configuration as part of Spring Boot application. So all the pain areas taken care by Spring Boot framework internally, and it provides the internal container. What it means, if we right click and run as, so it provides a Spring Boot application as part of run as, and when we click it, Spring Boot provides internal container which is running on 8080. So now application is running. So it is very easy in Spring Boot. It has embedded container with every applications, and we don't need to do any kind of external Tomcat server configuration or any other application server configuration. So it makes developers life easy. But if we go into the legacy application and we try to run as, so it never provides any internal configuration to run this application. We have to run this application on server. If we click on server, we have to configure this server externally. We have to go Apache, then we have to choose Tomcat server 8, then we have to go here, then we have to provide the path of Tomcat server where we install locally. We have to select the GRE. So lot of pain for the developer to configure a Tomcat server or any application server in Eclipse, and then only he can run legacy application on that server. But as you see in the Spring Boot, we don't need to configure any kind of server or container, internal container. So it has inbuilt container, and we just right click and run as Spring Boot. So this application will start it on internal container. So now the basic difference between Spring Boot based application Spring Boot framework based application versus Spring legacy application is no need to understand the Spring configuration. configuration is taken care by the Spring Boot framework by itself. But in Spring legacy application, developer needs to understand and to have to write the lot of configuration. So in Spring Boot application, IOC and DI means inversion of control and dependency injections concepts is taken care by Spring Boot framework. But in legacy application for IOC and DI, we have to do lot of configuration. In Spring Boot, it has internal server, or we can say container, to run the application. But in legacy application, it don't have. We have to configure a separate server, and we have to take care all kind of configuration for that server. Then only we will be able to run the application on server. So these are the basic difference between the Spring Boot and Spring legacy application. So that is the reason nowadays Spring Boot framework is getting very famous. It provides the boilerplate applications where the developer just need to take care of their functional requirements and their business logics. You don't need to be take care of any kind of Spring based configuration or any server based configuration. So now let's see what is the basic feature of Spring Boot. Easy to use over the Spring legacy application. Spring Boot has very less configuration, or we can say we don't need to be take care any kind of configuration. And Spring Boot framework have internal embedded container. I hope you understand the Spring Boot framework, its basic feature, and the comparison with the Spring legacy application. Thank you. Please subscribe our YouTube channel for better future.